I was able to take that information and think back to my most powerful client stories and success stories. And I was like, this is literally what I've helped people with. So again, I started to lean into it more and more in my content. Started to call in more and more dreamy clients. And I was like, whoa, I really love this. And then I actually started to take what I was learning inside the Chosen Path and teach it to my clients. When they were having trouble figuring out what they were meant to focus on, who they were, like who their ideal client was, how to really lean into their messaging, their unique strengths, I started to teach this to my one-on-one clients. And suddenly they started to have amazing results. And they started to realize who they're actually meant to be.
Welcome to Empower and Evolve, the vortex of growth that you have been looking for. I am your host, Kat Tunnyberg. I'm a mindset coach for female leaders, and I am committed to helping you cultivate the mindset shifts that generate you wild success. Each episode, we explore ways to tap into your true potential. We face the shadows that hold you back, and we embrace the journey toward your most abundant life. If you love what you learn here today, then I invite you to share this episode with someone that needs to hear it. Right, it's time to plunge in.
Part 2 of how astrology changed my life. Are you excited? This is so fun. I literally, just before I hit record, I was like, oh, I could probably turn this into a 2-part story because there's so many elements to it. And then I kept an eye on the time and I was like, oh yeah, this is like my normal cutoff time for a podcast episode. So I should probably wrap it up and bring you juice in the next episode. So here we are. It's time for the juice. So if you haven't listened to my last episode yet on part 1 of how astrology changed my life, you would want to go and listen to that one first and then come back to this one. So here we are. I'm finally leaning into everything I learned from Casey. I'm having this realization how I literally am on this earth to help others bring the feminine and masculine energies into balance in their business so that they can step into their legacy, their soul mission, etc. I was like, this is so cool. So I started to really lean into that, talking about this in my content. And I started to attract a lot of my dream clients. And I was like, oh, wow, this is really fascinating. Like the people that started to come into my world were incredible. I started to get more feedback about my content really landing differently. And I was like, whoa, this is super cool. So then a couple months later, I see that Casey has a Black Friday sale for one of her courses, which I highly recommend if you're ever wanting to kind of get into this work. It's called Chosen Path, and it basically just teaches you how to take the information from your birth chart that relates to your business in regards to what is your brand and who is your ideal client, and how to use that in your marketing, etc., as well as like more things. So I saw that. And I forgot in between that, I'd signed up for her membership, which is like a 12-month membership. It's called Astro VIP, where every month she has a new masterclass, and she also sends out like monthly lunar reports and a yearly solar report. And it was really cool. Like I signed up for that because that report, that branded birth chart had changed my life. And I was like, I want to learn more. Like, tell me more, classical cat fashion. And those reports were super helpful because it's basically like your energetic blueprint for the month ahead. And I loved the masterclasses. So I started to learn more and more about astrology. And I was like, whoa, this is so accurate. Because up until that year, I had always put astrology in the too hard basket and too complicated and not something that I was interested in learning. But then here we are. And now I'm becoming a master astrologer. Yay. So I started to go through the Chosen Path and I was mind blown. For those of you who speak astrology, I found out that my brand planet is Saturn. Hello, makes sense. And my brand placement is in the 9th house. And the way that Casey teaches astrology is not your, like anyone else who I've seen, like, oh, your midhaven is your career line. This is what you're meant to do. Like, no, it's way more in depth. So I'm really excited to be learning from her about astrology and how I can really take this information and turn it into something powerful and help others as well. So anyway, I learned about that. And at first I was once again resisting it. I was like, oh, what the fuck? This doesn't resonate. But I was like, oh, you know what? I'll just start leaning into it. And then I started to learn about my ideal clients and like their needs, and recognizing that my ideal client actually has a lot of like my ideal client planet, which is the moon, is in the 12th house. So the subconscious, the fear of like everything that's like right below the surface, the things that are holding you back before your next breakthrough. And I was like, oh my God, it makes so much sense. Like it's just, I was able to take that information and think back to my most powerful client stories and success stories. And I was like, this is literally what I've helped people with. So again, I started to lean into it more and more in my content, started to call in more and more dreamy clients. And I was like, whoa, I really love this. And then I actually started to take what I was learning inside the chosen path and teach it to my clients. When they were having trouble figuring out what they were meant to focus on, who they were, like who their ideal client was, how to really lean into their messaging, their unique strengths, I started to teach this to my one-on-one clients. And suddenly they started to have amazing results. And they started to realize who they're actually meant to be. And they had huge breakthroughs and realizing like some like pivots in their business and like fears of like stepping into certain parts, even though they've always been curious about it and passionate about it. So it was wild to start to see that being reflected back. And then in February this year, Casey announces a new program. I've literally, at this point now, purchased almost anything that Casey puts out there. Like I'm her biggest freaking fan. And I have a client who's like that for me as well, which I love. So it's so cool to kind of see that being reflected back at me. But she announces this program called Blockbuster. And it's all about where in your chart your subconscious blocks lie and how to use your astrology in combination with subconscious reprogramming techniques to bust those blocks and patterns. Right up my alley. At this point, I'm like fucking huge fan of astrology. I'm like eating anything up. Like I'm like so keen to learn more and understand it more. And then I was like, oh my God. And like literally I help my clients with their subconscious. Like this is amazing. Like I want to learn this so I can take this to my client work. And I had so many aha moments going through that course. And I straight away was able to take this and apply it to my client work, this time just for my one-on-one clients. And it was huge. Like the results that I was getting, like, I mean, I had really powerful transformations for people just utilizing NLP and hypnosis alone. But then layering the astrology and being able to pinpoint the exact root of where certain blocks and patterns started from and why changed the game. Absolutely changed the game. So my client work now, my like one-on-one transformational work with my clients has taken a whole new level. It's like the results I'm getting now are like just insane, absolutely insane. And I was really loving this. I was loving this new evolution of who I was starting to step into. And even in my mastermind, I started to bring in this astrology stuff. And I even created like special reports for my ladies based on everything I'd learned inside the chosen path and gave them like their unique brand strengths, their ideal clients, all these things, like basically similar to what I had gotten through that branded birth chart, but like less in depth. And then the girls in the mastermind were starting to be like, whoa, like huge aha moments, suddenly realizing where they were like in their shadows of their strengths and how they could start to change. And it, like, honestly, I was like, oh my freaking God, I have unlocked the jackpot here. This has been the missing key that I didn't even know I was missing when it comes to my client work. And when it comes to helping my clients have even bigger transformations. So I was already like, whoa, this is incredible. And I was able to take all these things that I had been learning from Casey and apply it to my client work. And I loved it. I was super, super stoked about it. And I saw that she was like starting to sell her astrology certification. And at first, I wasn't too interested in it because even though I was obsessed with astrology and what I was learning, I was already able to take what I had learned and implement it into my business. And I was already getting great results. So I didn't see it necessary to do a certification to take this work deeper because I was already able to utilize it and get amazing results. So at first, I didn't really think anything about the certification, and the idea of signing up for something that was like 12 months, super in depth. I was like, nah. And I never saw myself like wanting to become an astrologer. And then she started talking in her content about how this certification was going to be different. How literally the first 3 months we were going to spend to find out what kind of guide we are meant to be and what our unique lens is when it comes to taking astrology and helping our clients with it. And then I was like, oh, I can probably take this and 10x the results that I'm already getting my clients while still being a coach, not an astrologer. And I was like, huh. So I reached out to Casey. I asked her some questions and I ended up signing up. And it's one of the best decisions I've ever made. I utilized my emotional authority in human design for making that decision because logically, I shouldn't have signed up for that course. There was nothing logical about it. I had just made myself a promise to not sign up for any certifications, to take a little break from like this kind of stuff. And I had already a lot going on in my business and in my personal life. And I was like, I don't have the time for this. Like, I don't have time for this. This is not a good time. And at first, actually, I was like, oh, I'm just going to do this certification next year. Actually, I'm sure she's going to announce it again next year and I'll do it next year. And then she announces the bonus that anyone who joins this round gets an extra year inside like her legacy circle for free. So we would have an extra year to be in her world and able to ask her questions and really learn from her. And I was like, oh, logically, this does not make any sense, but it feels right. I took way more than 24 hours to feel into my emotional wave here. I think it was like 3 days. I was talking to some people, not because I wanted to have their opinion, but just because I wanted to hear myself talk about it and just kind of get some reflections back. And interestingly enough, most people were like, you shouldn't do it. You've already got some amazing skills. Like you're already able to take this astrology knowledge that you're learning and like la 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 la. And still inside of me, there was this like, no, this is it. This is it. So I signed up. And it's only been a couple of weeks. And everything is landing. Everything is actually starting to make sense. Where I was originally resisting some of this ninth house energy, which is like my brand, the house that my brand lands in, which is the effervescent teacher, the guide, someone who helps people change their belief systems. Like the classical theme of the ninth house is travel across long waters. So it's really, if you think about like big transformations, how people enter into your space as one person and then they leave as the other, which like now I'm like, yeah, why was I resisting? This is literally the work that I do. Duh. And there's so much more to it. There's also like eventually, this is like the teacher archetype. This is really like a spiritual teacher, someone who helps people shift their paradigm, shift the way that they see themselves, the way that they see the world, the way that they see themselves in the world. And now I'm like, yeah, that is exactly what I do. But somehow I was resisting it at the beginning. Silly me. And I was going through her material And it just hit me. It's like, I know exactly how I can use astrology. Essentially the same way that it found me. It's helping people become the person that they've always meant to be, to bridge the gap between who they are right now to who they're meant to be when it comes to like really becoming their legacy selves, like the person who has huge impact, the one that changes lives, and lean into their branding, like who they're meant to be, as well as who their ideal client is, what their message is, what kind of guide they are, like essentially activate their soul's purpose. And when I read that's literally who I am, I was like, this is exactly how I'm going to use astrology. And I'm so freaking excited. And then we started to go deeper and we went into like hemispheres and learning about hemispheres and how that affects the kind of guide we are. And I realized that I'm a upper hemisphere kind of gal, which means I'm literally here to help people get external results, like as in like achieve external success, something that is measurable. I'm literally the person who's going to help them become the person they need to be to live out their dream life. Like that is literally the kind of guide I am, as well as I have a secondary influence in the Western hemisphere, which is all about making sense of timing and relationships and how things are mirroring back at you and what the lessons are and what you're going through and how in general, in both of these hemispheres, clients who come to me are going through a lot of transition and change, and they're wanting to make sense of why it's happening and who they're meant to be through all of it. And I was like, oh my God, it makes sense. Everything, like the dominoes were starting to fall together. I was like, oh my God, this is incredible. And then diving even deeper into elements and recognizing that I'm an earth and air element. And I was reading through this and I was like, oh my God, it's literally the thing that my clients tell me, how the way that I see things is so different to how everyone else sees the world, and how literally I can share a little nugget and that completely transforms someone's life. Those like little mental breakthroughs, mindset breakthroughs. I was like, yeah. And I was actually thinking back to how a few days ago I had a client call where she had told me something like, this client came to me because she wanted to allow herself to let love back in. She's had a lot of negative experiences with love in the past, narcissistic abuse, like all these things. And she wanted to learn to let love in again. And she said something along the lines of like, oh yeah, I know that this is still going to take a long time to allow myself to love a man. And as soon as I read that, I was like, I knew that there's one man in her life that she really, really loves and really adores, and that she allows herself to be fully seen by. And I was like, you're already letting love in. Do you recognize this? But I didn't say it there because I knew that I had a one-on-one call with her a couple of days later. So on the call, I was like, hey, I want to talk into what you said. And do you realize that there is actually someone that you deeply love who is a male, and you're already able and capable of loving a man and letting them see you? And she literally, I see like the penny drop, and like I recognized that it was a really big moment. So I held space for her for 10 minutes. She was crying. She was like, holy shit, like, whoa, like, what the fuck? And I've had so many of these moments with my clients. So when I read that that is like one of the signs of someone who is a predominantly air strength, like an air element guide, I was like, oh yeah, that makes sense. And then the other one being earth, which is all about systems and structures and giving people the necessary scaffolding to really achieve their goals, and the actual step by step that they need to do to achieve their goals and their dreams. I was like, oh yeah, that's also what I do. I literally like talk to any of my clients, I give them the step by step that they need to do in order to move ahead. So it's been insane. It's been absolutely insane in this short period. I'm like, whoa. So to have this kind of confirmation for myself and being able to lean into it, I'm really excited to be taking this and helping others with it. So once again, if this hits home to you, reach out to me if you want to be on the wait list for this offer for when it does drop, the soul purpose activation. And I'm curious to hear who else is like an astrology nerd and how astrology has changed your life. Like, send me a message on Instagram. I'd love to hear from you. But that's essentially it. So now I'm on this year-long quest of learning astrology. And the cool thing is that within the first 3 months, we're actually going to be taught everything we need to launch our signature offer out into the world. So I'm excited for that. And then, yeah, like if I've never committed to anything that is that long when it comes to learning, besides my law degree, which apparently is also ninth house energy. I was like, oh, not surprised. Yeah, it's been wild. What was I just going to say with this though? Oh, so yeah, within 3 months that offer is going to be birthed into the world, and then after that we're going to dive deeper into some of the like master astrology things like horary, astrocartography, all these different things. I'm really excited for it. First time that I've committed to something for a year. Normally the kind of certifications and courses I do are like short and intense, and this time it's long and intense. And interestingly enough, I have been able to make time for it, because ultimately time is flexible and we are able to make time for the things that are actually important to us. So that's been my journey with astrology and how it has changed my life. I would love to hear what resonated with you, what landed for you, and I'll see you in the next episode. Bye.
Thank you for joining me on the Empower and Evolve podcast. I hope that today's episode has sparked a new insight, or perhaps reminded you of your own power to manifest change. If you found value in our time together, I invite you to subscribe and share this podcast with someone who might need a little reminder of their own magical power. It would mean the world to me if you could take just 2 minutes to review the podcast and help it reach more people. And remember, the journey of transformation is ongoing, and sometimes the most powerful step that we can take is to simply pause, breathe, and realign with our deepest intention. Until next time.